If 4 quiet letters on a lab report could dictate your character, you would be a passenger in your own life. If they cannot, and they cannot, then the steering wheel is already in your hands, and the only real question is whether you will grip it with clarity when the road buckles. Stay with me long enough to test something simple and unsettling. A 10-second habit you can use in any room to expose who is steering your next action, you or the weather around you. By the end, you will have a way to build calm authority from the inside out, not from labels, not from folklore, but from the disciplined choices that make a human being reliable to themselves even when the sea goes black. This is educational philosophy, not medical, legal, or individualized therapeutic advice. I'm going to talk about how to think, how to practice, and how to build boundaries. You'll decide what to adopt, and you should consult qualified professionals when the terrain is medical or legal or clinical. Stoicism aims at freedom through understanding, not at pretending expertise we don't have. Why does this conversation matter now? Because our age is rich in labels and poor in ownership. We are handed categories like discount coupons, personality types, star signs, algorithms that guess our taste and then tell us it is ours. Some of these are playful, some become cages. Treat the wrong thing as fate, and you quietly abdicate your life to it. The letters A, B, O are marvels of biology, crucial in medicine. They say nothing about your honesty, your courage, your patience under pressure. People still reach for such myths because they promise relief from the heavy work of choice. If you can outsource your character to a category, you never have to train. The ancient Stoics aimed a bright lamp at this exact escape hatch. They taught, in plainer language than we like to admit, that life divides into 2 piles, what is up to us and what is not. The event arrives, the judgment follows, the action you choose is yours. That's the doorway, and it never moves. First, in plain English, there's what happens to you, and there's what you do with it. The weather, the market, the rumors at the office, the diagnosis, the storm that takes the roof. These are the world's moves. Your move is smaller, but decisive. What you tell yourself about the event and the next behavior you select. You do not control the wind, you do control the sail. If you keep lashing the wind, you will exhaust yourself and move nowhere. If you learn to trim canvas, you might get home in worse weather than you wished for, but you will get home. Now, nuance. The line between event and judgment is not a concrete barrier, it's a discipline. Emotions fire automatically, and bodies shake under threat. Stoicism doesn't command you to be stone. It trains you to pause, name the emotion, and act from what you endorse, not what you merely feel. The faculty that chooses what ancient teachers called prohairesis lives in the same body that panics. Expect friction. The practice is not to erase the startle or the ache. It is to keep the inner hand steady enough to guide the outer hand. And when I say control, be careful. Control here does not mean domination. It means governance. You are not trying to bully the ocean into stillness. You are trying to be a good captain when it isn't. The fastest way to see why this distinction matters is to watch someone who ignores it come undone. Consider a composite. We'll call him Adrian. He built a small company with a clever tool and a fierce calendar. In his pocket, he kept little heuristics about people, the kind that make dinner conversation easy. He believed they saved time. He hired fast, filed colleagues into neat categories, repeated stories about why one person would always be erratic and another was born to lead. It was tidy in his head, so he mistook it for truth. When a large client asked for a ship date that collided with reality, Adrian treated the pressure like a weather report he couldn't change, and then tried to change his people instead, as if they were weather. He resorted them into myths and pushed harder. The product cracked in the same place twice. 2 key engineers left, not because the wind was strong, but because their captain believed the wind forecast explained everything. He forgot that the most actionable variable on any day is the way he frames the situation and the decision he makes about priorities, trade-offs, and morale. His downfall was preventable because it was not a meteorological event. It was a failure of ownership disguised as a theory of human nature. He had given his steering wheel to categories, and they drove him into the ditch. When the smoke cleared, he called it bad luck. The truth was ordinary and harder. He confused labels for laws and gossip for governance. The Stoic correction cuts deeper than a pep talk. Don't deny that the storm is real. Recognize that it is not your job. Your job is to identify what remains within your commission, how you speak, how you plan, what you incentivize, which deliverable you renegotiate, where you draw boundaries that guard the craft. Decision by decision, the character of a leader becomes visible and clarity becomes contagious. When clarity is missing, chaos recruits faster than you can. A second story, because sometimes the lesson refuses to arrive on time. Naomi spent a decade in a trauma unit. She was competent and compulsive, the one who picked up the extra shift because someone must. Her family had given her a map early. You are the caretaker, which meant you feel other people's pain and fix it before they ask. She wore this as a virtue until it calcified into an identity. Then a winter came with too many long nights and not enough staff. She found herself snapping at the student nurse who asked a precise question at the wrong minute. It startled her. That was not who she thought she was. The episode pinned her between pride and dread. She took 3 days off and sat in a kitchen that smelled like coffee and metal fatigue. The old map said, "You are failing, you must do more." Then a quieter voice slipped in. "What is yours to control right now? Not the policy, not the staffing, not the flu season, not even the expectations she had internalized from childhood." She wrote one sentence on a card: "Decide how to begin and how to end your shift." She added 2 exercises borrowed from ancient drills: a pause before entering the unit, a breath to answer the question, "What is today's work?" and a pause before leaving the same breath to ask, "What did I actually govern today?" The habit did not fix the staff schedule, but it broke a spell. Naomi realized she had been treating obligation like gravity when it was often just a story she agreed to. That realization is not a miracle, it is a hinge. She reduced her extra shifts, wrote clearer handoffs, and learned to say, "I hear the urgency. Here is what I can do by noon, here is what I will not do." It was a delayed awakening that hurt because it replaced a flattering myth with a sane boundary. Stoicism sometimes feels cold because it refuses to flatter our favorite illusions, but the warmth returns when the boundary holds and everyone can breathe. This is a good moment to align the compass again. People will tell you that Stoicism teaches suppression. It does not. The ancient project is the education of judgment. Emotions are data, judgments are decisions. The feeling is not a verdict, it is a signal. Suppose you are insulted in a meeting. The heat belongs to your animal body, the reply belongs to your character. If you rehearse that separation in small stakes, waiting in a line, taking a cold shower, walking the last mile in rain, you build a reflex that serves you when the stakes are high. Voluntary discomfort is not machismo. It is a laboratory where you practice controlling your reaction to unpleasant stimuli, so you don't have to practice for the first time when your child is sick or your job is on the line. An athlete straps into resistance so the race feels like a relief. A Stoic rehearses friction so life feels navigable even when it isn't pleasant. Against this inner training, you must also acknowledge the outer game. Power exists, incentives nudge people, structures matter. Here, I'll borrow the lens of a Florentine secretary, only to illuminate boundaries. If you walk into a court where flattery is the currency, you will be taxed for telling the truth. If you sit at a table where nobody risks disagreement, the organization will make sentimental decisions and call it harmony. Stoic inner mastery is not naive, It assumes the world contains wolves and angels, and most of us as hybrids trying not to be either. When you see power clearly, you can decline to be cruel without consenting to be prey. Agency is not loud, it is specific. You define the behaviors you will not perform to buy favor. You design your mornings like a fortress, so the world's urgency does not conscript your mind by 8 a.m. You negotiate from what you will do, not from what you fear. Let's put our hands on the core ideas in the simplest terms, and then add the layers. Your judgments are yours. Your choices are yours. Your efforts are yours. Outcomes are partnerships between your efforts and the world's variables. If you measure your worth by outcomes alone, the world owns you. If you measure your worth by the integrity of your next choice, you retain your jurisdiction no matter what the market does. This is why the dichotomy of control is not a poster on a dorm wall. It is the architecture of a life. The more energy you pour into what is not yours to govern, the less you have for the few things that are. And those few things, what you say, what you do, what you aim at, are precisely where your character is built. Nuance again, because slogans are fragile in a windy world. There are seasons when your agency is narrowed by illness, by poverty, by policy. Stoicism does not deny constraints. It teaches craft inside them. You might not choose the battlefield. You can choose your formation. You might not select the storm. You can select the discipline of how you lash the gear. When the constraint is unjust, you may also choose to resist it strategically. Calm is not consent. It is a platform for effective response. The inner fortress is not a bunker, it is a staging ground. A third arc to honor the possibility of change when you treat character like a skill. Matteo grew up fast, then too fast. At 26, he had a gift for sprinting into new jobs and a habit of burning out by the second winter. He liked to say he was all or nothing, which is how people baptize an impulsive pattern with a dramatic name. Somewhere between a broken lease and a broken promise, he said something so simple it almost sounded wise. I can't keep doing this. Many people say this at the lip of a crater. Few say it when their feet are still on safe ground. He started small and ridiculous. He selected one voluntary discomfort, an early wake-up he disliked, and he paired it with one daily scaffolding, writing 3 sentences in a notebook he would be embarrassed to show anyone. In the beginning, the sentences were ugly. Woke up at 6, wanted to quit, didn't. He added a question. What is mine to control until noon? It was too modest to impress, and that was its strength. By noon, his wins were boring and cumulative. He stopped promising dramatic change to friends and started building ordinary momentum in silence. He met weather, a late payment, a cracked tooth, a manager who took credit. The old Matteo would have called these omens and quit. The trained Matteo recognized them as the world being the world. He kept his commitments, asked for credit in writing, and changed roles the way a captain changes tack deliberately with a destination in mind. A year later, he had not become a saint, but he had become someone you could count on, and that is rarer and better. If you're listening for the structure, you can hear it in all 3 arcs. In Adrian's downfall, categories replaced governance and the ship drifted. In Naomi's awakening, a story loosened and a boundary appeared. In Matteo's transformation, tiny acts of ownership stacked until they formed a self. The method repeats. It is not glamorous, and that is precisely why it works when the glitter wears off. And this is where we return to the open loop I promised, the 10-second habit that reveals whether you are steering or being steered. You can do it anywhere, and you should do it when you least feel like it. When the email hits, when the rumor lands, when the fear rises, ask gently but audibly if needed, what here is mine to govern? Then answer with verbs you control. I can verify, not speculate. I can restate the constraint and propose 2 options. I can delay my reply 10 minutes. I can say no without apology. I can speak the truth without spectacle. This is not a mantra to make you feel better. It is a procedure to locate your agency. It won't make the wind change, but it will keep you from confusing the wind with your hands. Some people hear this and worry it will make them cold. The opposite is truer. When you stop wasting heat on fantasies of control, you have more warmth for compassion, because your care stops pretending to be omnipotence. You can sit with a friend's pain without promising you will erase it. You can do the next right thing without turning it into a theater of martyrdom. The ancient teachers were not trying to make statues. They were trying to make citizens who could be useful when the city was on fire. That requires a supple mind, not a rigid face. How do you translate all of this into days that have laundry and deadlines, not just metaphors? Build your mornings like scaffolding. The world will hang banners on your mind if you don't raise your own first. Begin with one act that requires no permission and strengthens the muscle you want more of. It might be a modest exercise, a short reading, a minute of stillness to bring the day into focus. Pair it with one voluntary discomfort, not because pain is holy, but because friction is training. If you choose a discomfort, you stop being surprised by the involuntary ones. Select a phrase you will carry, something like, "Events are raw, my judgment cooks them," or "This is within, that is without." Say it when the first interruption arrives. If this sounds austere, note that it is efficient. You will spend less time repairing the damage of impulsive replies if you budget a pause before the first one. Boundaries deserve their own breath. A boundary is not a threat, it is a description of what you will do. If you raise your voice, I will end the call. If the deliverable changes, the date changes. If the meeting has no agenda, I will not attend. These are not ultimatums. They are how you govern your participation in other people's weather. In rooms where power favors the loud, you can still be firm without performance. Observe the incentives, speak to the structure, and don't mortgage your integrity for approval. If that costs you favor, you have learned something about the currency of the room. That knowledge is expensive and valuable, and it frees you to decide whether to stay. Let's return, briefly, to the seduction of biological myths. The human mind loves patterns so much it will invent them to avoid uncertainty. That tendency is not wicked, it is childish. To grow is to tolerate the fact that character is not delivered by genetics or gossip, but trained by repeated choices. Use symbols, if you like, as mirrors, not as chains. If a metaphor prompts reflection, keep it. If it excuses your worst habits, throw it into the sea. The Stoic method is simple. Look at what you control, work on it, measure yourself by it. Everything else is scenery. Beautiful, terrifying, important, but scenery. Some will ask whether this stance is compatible with ambition. It is the only stance that can support it without eating you alive. Ambition grounded in outcomes alone is a fever. You feel invincible when the market smiles and worthless when it frowns. Ambition grounded in craftsmanship is a fire. You tend it daily, regardless of applause. The former rides luck, the latter survives it. When you live as if you own only your efforts and your ethics, you can aim higher without becoming brittle. You will fail often, and because you do not measure your worth by results alone, you can learn with less vanity and more speed. Imagine your life as a ship that must cross an ocean you did not design. You can curse the weather, or you can become a student of it. You can wait for calm seas, or you can master storm tactics. You can dream about a larger vessel, and sometimes you should, but no ship upgrades will substitute for a captain who can't keep a heading. The mirror is your friend here, not the mirror that flatters or punishes, but the one that simply reflects. Each night, look into it and ask, where did I confuse wind with will? Each morning, answer with an action so small it is almost shy. The architecture of a trustworthy life is built from such beams. There are limits. Even the calmest captain reaches ports closed by decree, waters blocked by forces beyond any honest effort. Stoicism is not a spell that opens gates. It is a discipline that keeps your hands clean enough to knock again tomorrow. Sometimes the right action is to leave a harbor that refuses you. Sometimes the right action is to stay, repair, and try at dawn. The world will not grade your exam with perfect fairness. Life is not school. But your own conscience will know the difference between abandonment and endurance, and you can teach it to choose wisely more often than not. Let's close the stories, because a good narrative honors its debts. Adrian learned slowly, the way some lessons insist. He stopped sorting people into folklore and began to publish constraints early, to say, "This is the wind, here is what we can do, here is the cost. Choose." He recovered a kind of authority that feels like gravity to those around you. You stop needing to be right, and you start needing to be clear. Naomi kept her pauses. She still cared as relentlessly as before, but her caring became channeled instead of flooding everything. The student nurse who once received her impatience later received her mentorship. That is what boundaries make possible, the turning of sharpness into skill. Matteo kept writing ugly sentences he would not show anyone. His notebook grew heavy and his life lightened. He became boring in the best way, predictable to himself. He could trust his hands. That is the secret courage no algorithm can detect. If you want something to carry from this, let it be the practice in the shortest words. Event, judgment, action. Say it under your breath when the day tilts. Event, judgment, action. Decide what is yours. Decide again. Breathe, then move. If you want a line to memorize, try this. Within is work, without is weather. It sounds too simple until you try to live it. Then you discover it is a discipline that requires everything you have and returns more than you expected. Steadiness, clarity, a surprising tenderness for others who suffer the same storms. By now you may feel the open loop click shut. The 10-second habit was never magic. It was a choice to locate the lever you can actually pull before you grab the ones that only squeak. Do it in rooms that scare you. Do it when your body wants to rush. Do it when you feel yourself becoming the worst version of you under the pressure of somebody else's urgency. You will not always succeed, and that is fine. Failure is just weather inside the fortress. Repair, review, re-enter. This is work for a lifetime, which is fortunate because a lifetime is exactly what you have to spend. If you wish to go deeper, the next chapter writes itself. Practice negative visualization, not as a morbid hobby, but as a vaccination against shock. Calmly imagine the loss of what you love, not to make it happen, but to educate your gratitude and your readiness. Practice time management as a Stoic discipline, not as a productivity cult. Design your day so your best energies meet your best responsibilities while your phone is still sleeping. Keep building scaffolding you can stand on when the sirens start. The world will do what it does. Your job is humbler and harder, to be the kind of person who can do the next right thing when it's no longer obvious what that is. Somewhere across town, a storm is already forming. On some morning soon, you will wake into it without warning. If you have trained your mind to ask, "What here is mine to govern?" the sky will still darken, but your hands will know what to do. And in that knowing, you will discover the quiet kind of freedom the old philosophers cared about more than victory. The freedom to be trustworthy to yourself when it matters, which is usually when no one is watching.